Well, welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 8 p.m. Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Well, welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 8 p.m. Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022, and we're literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight. Wait, didn't I already say all of this? Oh, sorry. Had a little bit of a Bill Murray moment there in honor of Groundhog Day.
You're so funny, Al, at times. Thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ+ evening news show. Whatever happens, you will see it. Queer News Tonight is supported by viewers like you. We are part of the partnership between Happening Out Television Network and Hotspots Magazine. Hotspots is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ+ experience. We bring you the best of LGBTQ+ news, entertainment, and support of our community.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson. Let's welcome anchor FayWhat. She's a radio and television personality and has a popular blog and YouTube channel aiming to unite the L and the G together. She's a hostess and MC for many South Florida events, an animal advocate, and owner of Fay's Fur Family. Also, make sure you catch the FayWhat Show, the first LGBTQ+ morning show Mondays at 9 a.m. Eastern online, and oh, by the way, on your smart TV. Good evening, Faye.
Good evening, boys. Last night I was able to watch the FayWhat Show on Roku, and I was just salivating over Damian Lenore. He is the boy that I'm in bed with, kikiing with, and oh my God, I mean, I could be straight for like a day. Just letting you know. Okay, yeah. Go watch it on Roku when you get a chance.
I was enjoying it too, and I assure you, I'm not straight.
Let's welcome, I wondered when we were doing that show, you were saying, move more to the left, Faye, more. I mean, more, like left, like in your car. Next, let's welcome anchor John Hayden. John's been a journalist for 27 years and now works for several South Florida outlets, including SFGN, covering politics, arts, and the bar scene, mostly for the latest on Happy Hours. He spent much of his career covering the stupidity and scandals of Hollywood and interviewed nearly every big name in TV, movies, and music. John considers the time that he had to sit and interview Shirley MacLaine after she yelled at him as the scariest 4 minutes of his life. Didn't I scream at you the other day and scare you a little bit?
For 4 whole minutes, yes.
Okay, just wanted to remind you. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Faye. And you know what? I love spending time with you. I was salivating a little bit on our shopping date today. It was great.
You know, I'm sitting right here. Right here.
Up next, let's welcome a very excellent lunch date. Anchor Dr. Julio Capo Jr. He is a history professor and the deputy director of the Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab at the Florida International University. He specializes in the history of race relations and immigration in the United States, as well as LGBTQ+ studies. He is an author of the book, Welcome to Fairyland, Queer Miami Before 1940, which is right when he moved here. He's also curated a new exhibition called Messages from a Pandemic, AIDS Graphic Communication. Also, by the way, he's not the kind of doctor that can write you a prescription when you get that itch down there, but he's still a great guy. Oh. Good evening, Julio.
I'm the useless kind. Untrue.
So untrue.
But if you were like, I always got really worried on a plane that someone would be like, is there a doctor? And they would make me like, and then I would bore them to death with history facts. Let's welcome anchor Gregg Shapiro, a 1999 inductee into the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame. Gregg is the author of 2 short story collections and 6 books of poetry, including his latest, Fear of Muses, an entertainment journalist whose celebrity interviews and music reviews run in a variety of regional LGBTQ+ and mainstream publications and websites. His screensaver movie review column can be found in South Florida Gay News, San Francisco's Bay Area Reporter, RottenTomatoes.com, and more. Good evening, Gregg.
Happy National Tater Tot Day.
You're a
We had
hot.
Who knew?
We have the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the Queer News headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points of the Queer News for today, Wednesday, February 2nd.
Well, let's begin by queering up politics. Florida, have you heard? It has become ground zero for right-wing authoritarian political and legal push. The Florida legislature is currently considering bills attacking diversity rights, abortion protections, undocumented immigrants, and free speech in schools in what critics say is a bid by Governor Ron DeSantis to attract a hard right conservative base that could help him win the Republican presidential nomination in 2024. Proposed bills include giving parents more say over classroom curriculum and control of school libraries, and to lock out from state and local government business any company involved in the transportation of undocumented migrants. Two healthcare bills would criminalize medical professionals who provide gender-affirming medical care to minors and allow any medical professional the right to refuse treatment or procedures, including gender-affirming surgery or abortions, on simply moral grounds.
Immoral grounds.
Yeah, what's going on in Florida?
Everything is going on in Florida. I hate this guy. I really do. I mean, I have to say that. And I know that these days you can't say much on TV about people, but I really don't like Governor DeSantis. He's literally telling me what to do with my body. He's telling me what, some undocumented folks that live around my way, that they can't be here. And he's putting trans children's lives in danger with all these bills. This is some scary times.
I'm curious to ask, do y'all think that he really believes this, that this is his moral compass of what he's doing, or is this just pure politics?
This is just to be president. This is just to run for president. I mean, I can't speak for him, obviously, but I really don't think, he can't, is he really this awful or despicable?
Do y'all agree with that?
I don't. I think he really is this terrible. I think Trump would say anything to anyone to get elected. I think DeSantis is really just the man for the moment for his base. And Florida's a petri dish. We're the third largest state. The largest one is California, which is unabashedly blue. Second one is Texas, which is unabashedly red. We're the biggest purple state, and they're putting all of these things out there. And the fact is, the way the courts are lined up right now, the Texas U.S. District Court and the U.S. District Courts here in Florida give them almost an open path to the Supreme Court to get all of these things challenged and then set in constitutional stone for the next 50 years.
I'm curious in saying that it's the politics of the moment, which is, I hear you loud and clear. The politics in the moment in 1952 was Senator McCarthy. And he was washed away in the history of America. Do you think that that's what's going to happen to DeSantis?
Well, I'm from Illinois, and we sent 4 governors to prison. So I would say it's time to lock up Governor death sentence.
Wow.
Whether that's his real politics or not, I couldn't care less. He is dangerous in saying these things. What I would like for all of us to remember, which I know we talk about this all the time, that immigrant rights are LGBTQ rights, that black rights are LGBTQ rights, that reproductive rights are. Each one of these, we can't understand these as separate from, but of course as inclusive of our obligation to fight against that we are only free once all of us are free, and that and Florida's not new in this kind of, we've been the battleground for so many things throughout history, whether it's Anita Bryant, whether it's in the 70s, the ERA, we've been a petri dish, as you noted, for a long time.
It's very funny, before John moves on to talking about South Florida, Johnny Carson trademarked a phrase about Florida in 1978. He was the first person, to my knowledge, that used the phrase, the freak show state. And it's true today, 40 years later.
Truer than ever today. But let's move on and queer up South Florida. Trans protesters sue Miami-Dade County for violating their civil rights while in custody. 3 transgendered people, Gabriela Amaya Cruz, Christian Paladin, and Angel J. Torres Pucci, filed suit in federal court against Miami-Dade County for abuse they suffered while in custody after being arrested at protests for Black Lives Matter back in 2020. They have all filed suit in U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida to ensure that Miami-Dade County's policies regarding the health, safety, and dignity of transgender people in county jails are brought up to meet the standards required by the Constitution as well as state and federal law. Correctional staff undertook illegal strip searches, called them degrading and humiliating names such as it, hermaphrodite, and, most disgustedly, woman with a dick. They addressed them and referenced them using the wrong gender pronouns, threatened their safety, manhandled and physically hurt them, forced them to remove personal accessories that aligned with their gender, isolated them in solitary cells, denied them medical treatment, and required them to wear clothing associated with the wrong gender in order to be free from jail. And I would just like to point out that they were at a Black Lives Matter protest, and they went through all of this. The treasonous rioters, the treasonous insurrectioners at the Capitol just walked home. And maybe someone would charge them, maybe they'd be allowed to turn themselves in. And just the contrast is just devastating.
Look, they shouldn't have been treated this way, John. I am in agreement with you there, honey. But the reality is that, sorry to the few that aren't, most correctional staff are a-holes. They're not nice people. And once you go there and you're arrested, your rights are basically null and void. You are just treated like an animal. I've had plenty of my friends that have been arrested, and they're told all these awful names, and they're strip searched, and all the things that these women went through is common. It really is. I don't know if this law of this suing will go much further.
Faye, I hear your observation, and correctional facilities have employees that fall into a certain mold. Does it surprise any of you, however, we're not talking about Birmingham, Alabama, or Mobile, Alabama. We're talking about Miami-Dade County, an incredibly blue, generally progressive community that is completely ignoring the standard of rights that we would expect in a very blue city and county. Does it surprise you that this is going on?
I'm not sure it's as blue as you think it is. I think it's been purpley for some time, and we just talked about this in the last story. Also it's not just local politics, but also it's state politics and certainly national politics. And to peeling off some of these different points, this is not just a story about transphobia, and of course the violence of transphobia is so clear here, but also one against people of color. That it's very clear about the violence of the state of carcerality, of what it is. Why do we put people in these spaces that are so dangerous, stripping people of their humanity in the first place? There's a lot to peel back here on.
Next up, let's queer up the USA. Texas becomes the real Handmaid's Tale as record number of LGBTQ plus books are banned. Watch this.
This morning, Texas schools are at the center of a national fight over banned books. An NBC News investigation finding that at least a dozen Texas districts have removed books about race, gender, and sexuality after a surge of parent complaints.
Why are we sexualizing our precious children?
Since the fall, Iris Chang, a junior at Katy Independent School District who identifies as queer, has watched books vanish from her school library.
What do you think these parents want? To keep their children in this protected bubble in which the only opinions they really hear are the ones that they themselves represent.
Records requests to nearly 100 Texas districts found that during the first 4 months of this school year, parents made at least 75 formal complaints, compared to only one filed during the same period last year. Texas Governor Greg Abbott even calling for criminal charges against staff who provide kids with pornographic books. It's part of a national pattern of parents and school officials banning books at an unprecedented rate. One Tennessee district just last week banning Mouse, a Pulitzer Prize-winning graphic novel about the Holocaust. George M. Johnson's memoir, All Boys Aren't Blue, is one of the books banned in Katy and elsewhere. It's about a queer black child that at one point details sexual abuse.
What's it like to see this fight now play out on a national stage?
To kind of wake up every day and see that more and more people within the country who have power are trying to deny kids who are like me access to my story is heartbreaking.
Katy schools declined NBC News' requests for comment. Katy parent Mary Ellen Cuzella was inspired to fight for book removals after watching parents fight over books during the Virginia governor's race.
What we're talking about is vulgarity that is inappropriate for any child.
Iris, a member of her school's speech and debate team, is no stranger to speaking out. Lately, she doubts the adults are listening.
It sends this message to myself and my peers that our opinions aren't valued.
Many of the books under fire are newer titles purchased by school librarians in recent years as part of an effort to diversify content available in public schools. In Texas, a group of librarians are now pushing back, trying to keep those books on the shelves. They've created a hashtag FREAD Freedom campaign to share stories and support each other across the state. Willie?
All right, Antonia, thank you very much.
So, Queer News Tonight would like to point out that one book likely was missed in the bans. It's a very important book. You might find it in a lot of nightstands at most hotel rooms. It contains support of homosexual relationships as a protagonist heals a same-sex concubine in Luke 7, 1-10. A cheating wife reminiscing about her well-hung lovers, that's in Ezekiel 23, verse 20. And enough rape and murder to fill, well, a freaking Bible.
It's true.
Well, between the book banning in Texas and then the book burning in Tennessee recently, it's a very frightening time, and Art Spiegelman, who's the creator of Mouse, actually said this is the beginning of a very bad time.
Yeah, it's called Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, well, right.
Yeah. And it's very easy to revert and say, oh, this is Nazi and stuff like that. That is wrong and very insulting. This is a very American thing that's going on. We've banned books, back in before and probably after, but before the Civil War, papers in the South were not allowed to or firebomb and burn down if they printed anything that wasn't pro-slavery. They've tried to ban Darwinism in Tennessee back in the 20s. And then there was another big push in the 50s on the heels of World War II. So no, this is a very American thing to do.
I'm curious, Julio, you're an educator. How does this story wash over you, what we're watching around the country, but very specifically what's happening in Texas?
So, my first reaction to this is what everyone has said. I echo all the fear and the concern and the anxiety, but I will just kind of, to put a glimmer of hope in this story, and particularly this case in Texas, was that student who was fighting back and was really outspoken. There's something really inspiring to see those who are being stripped of their experience and their voices being so outspoken. And I feel like it gives me a great deal of strength and hope that we can do this collectively. We can fight these advances collectively because the young people are leading the way. And I feel very, very safe in that.
Before we move on, I just want to make the quick note. I was surprised to learn how much commonality there is in 1939 Berlin and 2022 Houston. They seem to be the same place first. The vulgarity, that parent talks about how motivated she was of the vulgarity of the words in books. Yeah. You better be very, very careful in what you're saying, because whoever is in power, who makes these decisions? And the moment you're no longer in power, somebody else is going to decide what is vulgar and not. Yeah. That's the whole point of a constitutional First Amendment of free speech and protection. And this story is so disturbing. The reference to Handmaid's Tale is so disturbing because this entire process of removing books is antithetical to democracy, antithetical to our Jeffersonian democratic process in America. It's a dangerous trend that we are watching, and dangerous for LGBT for sure.
Next, we report on our partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine in supporting that partnership. Happening Out Television Network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ plus religious live broadcast in the world, as more than 30,000 watch every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Watch this.
Kishai Martin, board member of Unity Coalition, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Well, we finished tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ plus Flash News.
So let's go. LGBTQ plus Flash News. China forces Grindr out of the App Store days before the Olympics. The Standing Committee of the National People's Congress passed the Personal Information Protection Law in August to, quote, protect the rights and interest of personal information, regulate personal information processing activities, and promote the rational use of personal information, end quote. The law includes provisions requiring any cross-border data transfers to be submitted first to the Cyberspace Administration of China. That's a real thing. The Cyber and Data Protection Regulator in China and states violations could lead to fines, listen to this, ranging between $7.7 million or up to 5% of a company's previous year's business revenue. The law went into effect November 1st, and many international apps are removing themselves from app stores in the country until they can better track compliance. Patrick Lenihan, a spokesperson for Grindr, said, quote, like many other U.S. companies, we've chosen to remove our app from the App Store in China due to the potential increased burden from China's recently implemented personal information protection law, end quote. Some media outlets have claimed that Grindr has removed itself from the app stores due to the Olympics, but that seems like more of a stretch than most of the athletes performing before the competing. Oh, goodness. Great pun. It's horrifying, and I just wanted, this is something for us to keep an eye on, and I don't even know how to react other than we have to be really, really mindful of the kinds of ways that our lives are being controlled on the state level.
The number one culprit here is the International Olympic Committee.
Yeah.
Why would the Olympics and sports organizations and corporate structures choose to bring their events to authoritarian regimes and countries? Why were we in Sochi? Why are we in Beijing? It's a bad combination right off the start. We know why, because they're buying you, but they shouldn't be allowed to.
What will all the gay Olympians do without Grindr? Oh my God! You'll just find another way to hook up, all right? Please be careful though, because you in China, all right? Just be careful.
Not just gay, too, by the way.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that China keeps a very tight control over all social media platforms because things like Grindr and Twitter and Instagram are used to converse in code and theoretically foment revolution.
Don't you wonder, I apologize to interrupt you, don't you wonder if they maybe be banning books in their libraries or speech in their schools? Don't you wonder if China's still
we can never get to that.
That's an American thing, Al.
Sorry, but I can't stop thinking about athletes stretching. LGBTQ plus Flash News. The Humph vows to ban trans athletes and pardon January 6 rioters if re-elected president. Watch this.
We will ban men from participating in women's sports. So ridiculous. Did you see the man who was on the swimming team at a certain school that I know very well? The record held for like 11 years. He beat it by 38 seconds. But the best is the weightlifting records. They're going. One guy walks in with one hand. He's going like this. He broke the record that held up for 20 years. For 20 years, they're putting like a little half an ounce on each side of the weights. And the women are working so hard. This guy comes in. Have you lifted before? No. Oh, wow. Take a look at the weightlifting records. You want to see some real, think of it. 2 ounces is unacceptable. They beat him by many pounds.
At a rally in Conroe, Texas on Saturday, former President Donald Trump discussed the things he would change about our current government if he gets reelected. Oh no, please no. And Republicans take back Congress. No, please no. His rambling, drug-fueled rants included promises to pardon those arrested for their treasonous activities on January 6th, as well as banning trans athletes in sports. He referenced both Leah Thomas, the Penn State swimmer, and Olympian Laurel Hubbard. As a correction to both 45 and the many trolls who are sure to make comments about this segment on YouTube, the current world record for women's weightlifting is held by cisgender woman Li Wenwen of China.
Yep.
Trans athlete Laurel Hubbard did not qualify for the competition in the Summer Olympics. For the sake of our country, lock him up already. Thank you.
We're going to break out into chant. Lock him up. No.
I have to just hearing his voice again gives me like PTSD or something. Yes, no.
I don't understand how he can bold-face lie so easily and such a lion's share percentage of minority in America just come right in with him and accept the lie. It's a lie. You were a liar, but a lion's share of minority accepts the lie.
You make my prostate hurt.
I mean, with that statement, I think he has solidified what we all already knew or suspected, is that the 2024 campaign will be, by the GOP, will be the most racist and bigoted and hate-fueled since George Wallace and Strom Thurmond of the late 40s and early 50s.
Yeah, that's
and I don't think we want to go back to that, but a solid 28% of Americans do.
Yeah. And by the way, production, could you start some research before the end of the show? Because we want to identify if Faye has a prostate.
I was shopping with her earlier. She does. Moving on. LGBTQ plus flash news. From South Florida Gay News, last night, South Florida stood up for LGBTQ plus students. Florida Republicans, led by Governor Ron DeSantis, are once again attacking the LGBTQ plus community. Last night, we fought back. In this week's SFGN, online and on stands tomorrow, I look at how our community is trying to make some noise as DeSantis and his GOP enablers score cheap election year points at the expense of LGBTQ plus youth. A pair of bills are speeding their way through the legislature that says schools, quote, may not engage in classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in primary grade levels or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students, end quote. Last night, about 300 people rallied at the Pride Center to say enough. Queer News Tonight went on location and turned the show over to the people most affected by this attack, LGBTQ plus youth. They did great and articulated the problem from a point of view none of us no longer can. It's going to take a lot of work and a little luck to defeat the Don't Say Gay bills. But it's important we stand up to the loathsome hate and bigotry oozing out of Tallahassee. I always feel very defeated when I write these stories, but seeing the passion there last night gave me some hope.
Say gay, always say gay.
Thanks for covering the story. I mean, and thanks to the young people who are fighting for all of us, really. But it's an inspiration.
Inspiration is the right word. Our first broadcast in broadcast television, Roku, Apple, etc., and we turned the entire Queer News Tonight, which we're doing right now, obviously, over to 15, 16, 17-year-olds, and they did a magnificent job, and they show exactly what the problem is in Tallahassee from old white guys. They were absolutely inspirational last night.
Yesterday's rally was wonderful, unifying, inspiring. All those young people were just incredible. We need to duplicate them. We need to make carbon copies of them and have them represent us in the future. We need more of them to fight for us. Mm-hmm. The LGBTQ plus flash news. New study shows male same-gender couples have highest family income. Dinks are back and gayer than ever. Some of you may remember the acronym DINK, meaning dual income, no kids. A new census data analysis from the Hamilton project of the DC-based Brookings Institution shows the same-gender male couples have the nation's highest median family income among 3 types of couples. The authors point to U.S. Census Bureau data showing that same-gender female couples had the lowest median family incomes, even though they were more likely than opposite-gender couples to have 2 income earners, have higher education, and live in a densely populated area, which the study says are characteristics associated with higher incomes. The report also says that when same-sex male and same-sex female couples are lumped together, the census data show they have a higher median income than opposite gender couples. This study is stupid, okay? How about you use this money to help those transgender kids get the science behind them so they can play whatever sport they want freely. This is stupid, all right? That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Vacation cruise in Greece. Child. Pool. Child. Greg?
I wonder what Susie Orman and her wife Kathy Travis would think about this story.
I'm going to tell you in a moment.
As a side note, just one of the things, the government needs to stop thinking about gender in this way between like same sex and opposite sex, right? Because in terms of gender, because there are more than two genders, and like part of this is also just to have us think differently about the way we confine people into one or the other. Yeah.
The reason Faye is so angry over this story is because same-sex female couples, they didn't do so well.
We never do.
I'm just saying. It's up to you.
Oh, I'm reading. It's me. I'm just staring at everyone. Like, is it my turn?
Hello, doctor.
But not the kind of useful one. We established this early on.
More useful.
No, truthfully,
is there a doctor in the house? Yes, there is.
I will give you. I should be your lifeline on like who wants to be. Is that even a thing? Anyway, LGBTQ plus flash news.
We're trying to throw you a lifeline.
Thanks. Dave Chappelle continues to cause major problems for Netflix. For the first time in 5 years, the Human Rights Campaign has excluded Netflix from its list of best places to work for queer people. The reason? Dave Chappelle's comedy special, The Closer, in which the comic made jokes about transgender anatomy and disparaged LGBTQ plus people, as well as the treatment of LGBTQ plus employees who spoke out against the special. Netflix responded with a statement of its own saying, quote, it respectfully disagrees with the exclusion. A spokesperson for the service said, quote, while we have more work to do, we've made real strides on inclusion, including for our LGBTQ plus colleagues. For example, we offer comprehensive transgender and non-binary inclusive care in our U.S. health plans, as well as adoption, surrogacy, and parental leave for same-sex couples. And we've also worked hard to increase representation on screen. Netflix is the only major entertainment company to have commissioned and published independent research into diversity in our content so that we can better measure our progress. End quote. Jay Brown, Senior Vice President of Research and Training at HRC, revealed that the LGBT rights group had initially considered deducting 25 points from Netflix's overall score before deciding on the suspension. You know, keep everyone honest. This is the important part of this data, is that we have to keep people accountable, right? And I'm happy to see that we are keeping track of the way that this is going.
You know, I love this show because we can discuss varieties of ideas. You know who gets it wrong here? The HRC. Is Netflix an anti-LGBTQ organization? We would bust out laughing 6 months ago if somebody suggested that. It does the most progressive LGBTQ programming in history. Right. They had a broadcast of a comedian who justifies his humor in whatever way, and they say, don't ban the book. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Don't ban the television show because we believe in free speech. And because they don't ban the book, oh, I'm sorry, I mean the television show, they're removed from the equality index, or potentially they lose 25 points because they don't like chapter 3 of the book. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean the television show. I'm sorry. In this instance, cancel culture in LGBT goes way too far.
That was a long-ass sentence, Al. Just want you to know that. Hey, so HRC, I think you should have taken the 20 points off. Okay, that's just my own personal opinion. I watch most of my LGBTQ programming on Happening Out Television on Roku and on Netflix. Those are my two go-tos.
You know what? Chappelle has the constitutional right to say what he wants. Netflix has the right to put it on. And HRC has the right to say, whether we agree with it or not, We don't want to associate ourselves with you, at least this year. It's an ugly situation after ugly words, and there is no clean way out of it.
Dave Chappelle should be Ron Death Sentence's running mate. Smells like a losing ticket.
Can you imagine? So that is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show. Is our community important to you?
I hope it is. And if it is, then help us by liking and subscribing. Ring the bell for updates. Share the news with your family and friends, and teach your grandfather how to use Roku.
So post this broadcast in the many groups that you are a member of, even on Grindr. Tonight's stories about our community deserve the attention of your family and friends.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
Well, if our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. And that is the passion of the Happening Out Television Network and Queer News Tonight. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including FayWhat, John Hayden, Dr. Julio Capo Jr., and Gregg Shapiro. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. Good night.
Good night.